Y'all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. So I think one of the things that's been kind of resonating in my head with this practice is there's a great Tibetan teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and he would talk about groundlessness. And you think about, falling, and there's a fear of falling because if you hit the ground, what happens? It hurts. But if there's no ground to fall on, then falling doesn't hurt. Make sense? I saw mostly yeses and a couple no's. Perfect. That's about what I would anticipate. But the idea of groundlessness is that there's nothing to fall onto. Therefore, why have any fear whatsoever of falling? And we often live in so much fear because we're afraid of what's going to happen. Will it hurt when we fall? Will they think this? Will they think that? What if this happens? What if that happens? What will they want? What will they say? What will they do? What will my friends think? What will my family think? What will my colleagues think? What will my mother think? My father think? My brother think? My sister think? My better half? My partner? My whatever. And there's this constant fear of what everybody else is going to think about what we're doing. And as long as I've been in this practice and around these communities, that's something that I hear constantly is people's fear to just live and be themselves as they are. And so to me, introducing the practice of groundlessness, which to me is really fearless, and not being afraid to fall, I think is really a brave practice. And often that means we're going to step out of what typically would make us very comfortable. We would step out of doing what we would normally do. We would step out of making sure that we do things just to kind of conform with everything and everybody else. Like I said, to me, that requires being a little brave and moving beyond fear. How many of you live in fear over something or someone? How many of you are afraid to raise your hand to that question? Because the other 5 who didn't raise the hand to the first question, you're probably in that group. Maybe there's like 2 people out here that are free from both of those categories. But that's the truth, is most people, we live in fear. And I remember years ago, a friend of mine was Ken St. Pierre. It was actually a talk about the precepts, but same idea. He was at the doctor the next day, and he was filling out an anonymous form. and he was afraid to be truthful on an anonymous form. And it just kind of highlighted like how much fear we live in over what others are going to think. So, as we start the meditation practice and, we settle into a little bit of silence, if your mind's going to wander and race to something, which it absolutely will, allow it to wander a little bit to, why do I live in so much fear? And if it wanders to that, allow it to wander without any expectation of getting an answer. Right? My teacher, Venerable Yuzhur, used to always say, don't look for answers, just alter the way you ask questions. And I think that was one of the greatest teachings I received. So we'll start with a meditation practice. For those who are here for the first time, welcome. There's a couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you, right? You're not going to float away. Unfortunately, you won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Bless you. Don't judge your practice. Don't ask yourself, is this working? Is this not working? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You're going to hear sounds. People cough. People sneeze. Phones ring. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And the practice of meditation is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos, not escaping from it. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means your leg hurts. I'll guide us as we begin. I will settle into silence. Posture. If you're on the cushions, often it helps sliding into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten slightly. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on the chairs or benches, also just trying to sit up straight. Shoulders relaxed. Again, I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus, to the stomach or chest. Breathing in Feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Return to breath. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, in the mind, learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. No one else to be. Everything beautiful, just as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, and Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpata, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than anyone in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for every one of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because most of us don't respond to too many things the way we did the last 20 minutes. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. This is not necessarily a fun practice. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it is. It's checking into what is this present moment and becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. This is the essence of the Buddha's teachings. This is karma. The word karma simply means action. The Buddha taught we generate karma by body, speech, mind, thoughts, words, and actions or deeds. This practice is slowing down to begin to become aware of what you think and what you say and what you do. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't necessarily fix that. Might put it on hold for about 20 minutes, which is of course beneficial. But after the 20 minutes of meditation, you get up and you're just going to return to your life that is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess. That doesn't sound like any fun. We practice meditation to become aware of what we do in our day-to-day lives, what causes our suffering, so we can begin to make changes in our day-to-day life. Meditation is like a pause. The 20 minutes or 40 minutes or hour in here, that's the easy part. It's the other 23 hours out there that you got to worry about. And that's not necessarily where you're sitting down and doing your meditation. In here, it's quiet. It's relatively peaceful. It's calm. Everyone seems to be doing the same thing, right? Even though your heads are all a mess, just like mine. Out there, nobody does what you want. Nobody's doing what you expect. And everybody is disagreeing with you. Well, maybe not everybody, but enough people. So we do this practice, again, not to be good at meditation or sitting quietly and still, but so when we get up and walk out these doors, we can bring this into everything we're doing in our lives. That's where your life begins to change. That's where you recognize that meditation is every moment of your life, and every moment of your life is your meditation. Buddhist practice is every moment of your life, and every moment of your life is Buddhist practice. There's no separation. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's learning to be kind to yourself and others. Most people have a hard enough time being kind to themselves. So skip that. Be kind to others, and eventually you might be kind to yourself also. But be kind to somebody. Usually helps if you start with yourself first. Self-compassion, self-love, self-care. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to be really hard to have compassion for others. Or it burns out pretty quickly. And you build anger, you build resentment, you build frustration. And then we live in a world of fear. So I think I'd rather just stop there, open up to questions. As always, I'd much rather address what's on your mind, questions around meditation, Buddhist practice, or anything you're sitting with, and go from there. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Happy birthday.
Just a day. But thank you.
Do Buddhist people celebrate birthdays?
Buddhist people are humans. Buddhist people who have Jewish mothers celebrate birthdays. And fathers. I always say mother, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, the idea is that, from a Buddhist lens and a Buddhist practice, this is just one life. There have been endless lives before this, and there will be endless lives after this. And in this life, we identify ourselves as this person called Jeff who came into the world on this day and has these parents and family and friends and loved ones and all that kind of stuff. And so we fall into these labels and we make big things out of them. And, they can be. But they're just moments, I do wish that the way we kind of perceive these special days in our lives and holidays, especially and things like that, that we cared as much about people, family, friends, and strangers every day, as much as we do on these days that we consider special days, You know how nice people are on Christmas to everybody? Like, it's the most, it seems like, yeah, I do. It's the most amazing thing how kind this country is to people on Christmas. It's like 364 days a year, everybody could be mean and angry and pissed off at the world, but it's Christmas, so we're going to be nice. It should be that way every day, Yeah, I mean, I had a cake, I had phenomenal pizza, I had friends, family, loved ones, yeah. My mother got to sing to me, so she was happy. Yeah, for sure. It's a good day. Tomorrow it'll just go back to being a regular, normal, boring day. They're all, to me, truly to me, like, it's just one thing after another. I don't get too wrapped up in them. But thanks. Yeah. Other questions?
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the groundlessness?
Yeah.
I understand if there's no ground, we don't hit it and we get hurt, but what does it mean to have no ground?
I don't know. I think it's something that if you spend the next 6 months, or even just start with the next 6 minutes, 6 hours, 6 days, watch this evening, right? So when I said, who lives in fear, did your hand go up? Oh, you were the one who was afraid to raise your hand. Yes, okay, thank you now. So you were one of the 5. So you live in fear.
I do.
I do. See how much courage that took? Did that feel easy to say? Yes or no?
It was not difficult.
It was not difficult. Was it easy?
It was not easy.
It was not easy. Do you see how what I'm perceiving is anxious, uncomfortable, fear right now.
Okay.
If it was just me and you having this conversation and nobody else was here, would you be as uncomfortable?
No.
No. Why? This is your ground and you have hit it. These are obstacles that we set in our minds. These are barriers that we set in our minds. These fears, they're often based in some concern of what perception others will have of us, right? So if you and I were just sitting down casually having tea in a one-on-one conversation and I said these things, would be kind of okay. You could explore it. But now that there's a large audience and I'm totally picking on you intentionally, so thank you for bearing with me with this, you're beginning to feel discomfort, right? You've hit the ground. Imagine what that would be like if there was no ground to hit and we could just honestly, openly, authentically explore the nature of our fears. So I can't answer that for you, like your question. You can only answer it by beginning to explore what are the moments in your lives where you feel that there is a ground that you're falling on. And if that ground were not there, would you feel liberated, free from suffering? And I don't mean like all of suffering, I just mean like free in that moment from suffering, right? If there was no fear over anybody else being in this room, you would have a little less anxiety going on right now. But that fear keeps us living in that anxiety. Does that elaborate a little more?
Perfect.
Thanks. Yeah, good, because I don't know if I can answer that again. But to me, fear is, the Heart Sutra talks about having no obstacles in the mind, right? Far from confusions and imaginings, we reach ultimate nirvana. So our minds are so lost in just an illusion, delusion, based on the constructs that we have set up for our entire life. We should look this way, we should act this way, we should eat this way, we should hang out with these people, we should buy this, we should buy that, we should shop here, we should shop there. Our whole life is built telling us what we should look like and who we should be. And that's the biggest fear of them all, is this fear to actually just be yourself. And it's so hard to be yourself because you don't even know who yourself is because you're too busy trying to be everything that everyone else tells you you should be. Billions of dollars a day are spent on telling you who you should be and making sure that you conform to that way. We don't even know it. Often we talk about this being a free country. But is your mind free? Is your mind free from all of these constructs that the society has built into it? And when you start to pay attention to that, it can be a little bit scary because you realize like, oh my God, I'm not even making my own decisions. I'm making decisions based on what everybody else thinks I should do. But we trick ourselves and think that because it's what everybody else is doing, that that's the right decision. Yeah.
Is there such thing then as free will?
I don't know. It's a great question. It comes up a lot. It comes up a lot also around the question of nature versus nurture, free will. The expression or phrase in Buddhism is causes and conditions, and karma, the law of cause and effect. And that there's a great 4th century Buddhist philosopher named Arjuna. And there's a text called Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way. And he basically, the general idea is that no beginning, no end. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about this a lot, but you can't have something come from nothing. Thich Nhat Hanh's talk on what is nirvana, I think it's about 7 minutes and 40 seconds or 5 minutes and 40 seconds, but Thich Nhat Hanh, what is nirvana? He talks about no birth, no death. And so, back to the question of free will, every decision we make is based on past decision. We get to choose what decision that is, of course, right? I mean, you walked in, you chose to sit down in that seat. You could have sat down anywhere, but for whatever reason, you chose that seat. Do you know why you chose that seat? Yes, no, maybe. The reality is you chose that seat because we put it there. Right? If we didn't put a seat there, you'd be sitting on the floor. If we didn't put a floor here, we'd be sitting on the dirt. If there were just dirt here, we probably wouldn't have a temple here. But we just think as, oh, I showed up at the Dharma temple and I sat down. Everything is conditioned upon something else for its existence. And this is pratitya samupata. This is dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddhist awakening, that everything is conditioned. So I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that there is or is not free will. I'm not foolish enough to think I know the ultimate answer to that. But I'm also not, I also fully agree personally with the Buddhist teachings that the law of cause and effect is what operates our lives. And every cause has an effect, and that effect becomes the cause of something else. You know? Yeah. Yes, in the back. What's up, man? Welcome back. I didn't know you were here.
It's a shame that it hadn't happened this way, but did you see all the people who came together in Paris?
Yes.
With North Tibet?
Yes.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I'm at the gym every morning, and so the 40 minutes of the row of TVs in front of me is enough of my news for the day. And, it's good because I, for the most part, can stay in tune with enough of what's happening in the world. The Buddha taught that all life is going to be filled with suffering, and that there are going to be moments in our lives that are painful, and we deal with loss, loss of loved ones, loss of, friends, families, loss of structures, right? Loss of a very beautiful, precious, historic space. And when we lose anything, whether it's that or anything else that I just mentioned, those are moments where people often come together, and the resiliency that people have as I just think humanity is really beautiful. And it's tragic that and the things that get destroyed and lost on a daily basis. It's one of those things also that the way people and communities in Buddhism, we call it a sangha, come together, kind of like my answer earlier, like, I just wish people came together like that every day. But yeah, it's really sad that happened, and to see it is really tragic. Yeah.
I would like to add something on this topic. I am actually from Paris, France. I've lived here a long time. I've been very moved by what happened in Paris, not really because of this tragic fire, but, and I want you to help me on this, I think it's actually very tragic and sad that the Parisian, the French people only get together like this when there's something very tragic. And this past 24 hours, I don't know what to think about it. As you said, I wish because I probably left Paris because of that. You can ask for help or anything. There's nothing like this in Paris. So to see this is, yeah, it's beautiful. It's, you know, they get together and it's beautiful to see that. But I don't actually stopping my communication the past 24 hours with anyone. It's so sad. I'm sorry. Oh, so you have people who, like you said, I mean, I think I wish, like, people, the provision, where I'm from, could really get together and every day.
Yeah, we should put a Dharma Bum temple in Paris.
Yes.
I hear it's nice there. Well, maybe not from you, but from everybody else. Yeah, I think it's the same thing, like, you know, all parts of the world. You know, there are all parts of the world are filled with these things called humans. And us humans can be really cruel and really, you know, it's the root cause of suffering according to the Buddhist teachings. We can be really greedy, we can be really angry, and we can be really ignorant, you know, and have aversions to everything that's going on around us. Or as humans, we can be filled and practice the generosity, compassion, and wisdom. And that's the essence of the Buddhist teachings, is to practice generosity and compassion and wisdom every day, like you're saying, not just when, you know, and we see that in you know, this country and in all parts of the world that, and you know, I don't talk politics, I don't talk religion, but anytime that there's a very tragic event, it gets talked about, forgotten, next tragic event, talked about, forgotten, next tragic event, and it's just, what it comes down to, I think, as a practitioner is I have to start with me first and say, where is my generosity, where is my compassion, and where is my wisdom? And can I try to bring this into every area of my life? And that's not easy. You know, and it doesn't get, it actually gets harder. Because the longer you practice and the more you look at it, you know, you get something for the first time, you don't really know if it's clear, pure, beautiful, or if it's got a lot of flaws, a lot of cracks, a lot of breaks. And the more you look at something, you begin to see what's really in it. And that's one reason Buddhist practice is very difficult for a lot of people. Because when you begin to see our actions as an individual, it's not pretty sometimes. So the longer we practice and the more you look at our own levels of greed, anger, and ignorance, the harder it gets. So I think anytime we look at, you know, cities, countries, you know, parts of the world, it's just filled with humans. And, you know, I will say also that, you know, we can come together here. And in here, you know, everyone's nice, peaceful, happy, smiling. Do you know who the people are out there that are pissing you off? These people. No offense to any of these people, right? But I know a lot of them, and they're not always perfectly kind and happy and loving, and you know? So we can't, I think we have to be careful with just making, you know, the kind of blanket statements that just because we come together as Buddhists and practice. Believe me, if everyone in here was nice and kind and generous and loving to everybody all the time, none of us would be here right now, including myself. We're here to be real with that and work through it, not to just be like, oh, I'm Buddhist, that's all good now. So, yeah, you can, I definitely avoided the Paris stuff, but, you know, I appreciate you sharing the thoughts and yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure, please.
So I even had this, and I'm human.
Yeah.
I even had this thought of, I mean, really, like, oh my God, this happened for a reason,
Right.
kind of. And I was terrified by thinking this. I was like, maybe I was thinking also, I'm the only one to do things that are not good. So you get together literally.
Right.
And you talk with each other and you exchange something that you care about.
Right.
So,
Yeah. No, and I think there's a common theme around that idea that when tragedy occurs, you often see the best parts of people, the open hearts, the loving kindness, the compassion, the generosity. And when you face tragedy, there's a lot of beauty that can come from that, you know. Just a lot of beauty can come from it, definitely, yeah. Yeah,
I'm gonna take this one step farther.
I was afraid to call on you because of that. Did you notice my hesitation when I was, anyone else have a question? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Well, it's just the whole idea of change.
Yeah,
We think it's gonna be around forever and ever and ever, and nothing is around forever and ever.
yeah,
As a matter of fact, in terms of Notre Dame, it has been rebuilt from within since 14th century, because it's, everything eventually disappears.
yeah,
Or has the cracks. I blew glass when I was younger, and one thing you learn about blowing glass, you can't value an object too long, because eventually you're gonna drop it and it's gonna break. Yeah, I think that's the other lesson. I fully believe that it's gonna be rebuilt,
right,
but it never was completely what it was in the 1400s.
sure,
It has been changing. Even the glass in the windows has probably been replaced over the years, just because nothing remains the same. And I think that's another aspect of that, which
yeah,
I found very sad, but it made a point.
yeah. Yeah, and I think if, you know, to me, anytime I, you know, as a practitioner, I look at things like this, you know, even going on that metaphor, always coming back to, I myself am always changing. I myself am always cracking and breaking and crumbling and being rebuilt, you know, as a human. And, you know, I myself am not always what people perceive or think. And, yeah, to understand the impermanence of all things and is important. Yeah.
So you talk about when you bring up meditation, just sitting and being with the moment and kind of observing the moment. But like coming from someone who has like a lot of anxiety a lot of the time, how do you find kind of like mastering over your mind in a way that you can sit and be with the moment, but also, you know, not be like so anxious all the time?
Yeah, that's hard. So when we sit, if we're dealing with tremendous anxiety, you know, and having worked for many years with, say, combat vets coming back, or you know, teens who've gone through severe trauma, and people with pretty heavy PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders, or traumatic brain injuries, sitting in silence for 5 minutes for those populations and many of us in this room is like torture. Because for 5 minutes of silence, what are you left with for those 5 minutes? The thing that actually led you here to begin with. And you're like, wait, my head's a mess. I'm going to go to meditation. Wait, now I'm sitting here for 5 minutes in silence. My head is even more of a mess. This isn't working. And then there's the anxiety that kicks in around all of that. I think one thing that's important is to develop ways to be with anxiety aside from just sitting in meditation, right? So I usually use this with regards to patience, but it's kind of the same thing with anxiety or anything that makes us uncomfortable. What it's really coming down to is the Buddhist teachings on aversion, right? The fear of being with something, right? So you have a family member, say, that you call and they drive you crazy and you just don't like talking on the phone with them?
Yeah.
Okay. It's usually a safe question, but I just want to make sure. Like 9 out of 10 are all in. Once in a while, someone's like, no. And I'm like, okay. So my suggestion is call that person. Stay on the phone with them. And the moment that you're just like your skin is crawling and they're driving you crazy and you just want to hang up the phone and you're irritated and frustrated and you're having a complete aversion to that moment, stay on the phone. What it's teaching you is, in a way, to learn to be with things that are uncomfortable. And I think finding other examples like that throughout your life that are not just in meditation. Because if you have a crazy racing mind like most of us do, all you're going to do in meditation is sit with that crazy racing mind. So we must figure out a way to train ourselves to be with the crazy racing mind and to be with the things that we would normally run from. There are so many areas in our lives that we run from things, right? We're just, constantly uncomfortable and we want to change. The meditation is not going to be, might not even be the best, but it's definitely not going to be the only way to kind of counteract or be with anxiety or any emotion that we sit with a lot. We have to figure out lots of other little tricks. This is a crazy one. It kind of relates, but actually doesn't relate at all. But this is just an idea of a crazy thing that I did, just to kind of give an example. Years ago, when I first got into this Buddhist practice and I was like all in, this is 16 years ago. And I started going to the temple and I was like loving it. And I'm learning about non-attachment, right? Not attaching to our things that are so important to us. Well, I was really attached to my convertible cars, right? Had to have a new Mustang every year, had to have a convertible, had to look cool, like that whole scene. And so I was really kind of digging this teaching on non-attachment. But I wasn't digging getting rid of my car, right? So, anyone ever bought a new car? Okay, Pete, you buy a new car, you get the first little scratch or dent on it. How do you feel? Ruins your day, right? I don't think it ruins your day, that's not bad, right? And then 2 years later, you got lots of dents and scratches on it. How do you feel?
It's normal.
It's normal.
I accept it.
You accept it. But that first little scratch is miserable. So I was like, okay, non-attachment. How am I going to be not attached to this new Mustang I just got? So I started kind of toying with this idea in my head. And this is crazy. I'm not suggesting anybody try this at home. But I drove home with my new car. I took out my key. I said, don't try this at home. Definitely not on somebody else's car. And I went right above the handle where you put the key in. This was back in the day when, you had to actually turn a key. And keyed it. And every single day I got into my car, I had to look at the fact that my brand new car, and did that change anything about the car?
No.
Nothing. What did it attack? My ego, my pride. Again, for you it's anxiety, right? I always have a tough one with anxiety because other than when the Cubs are in the playoffs, I've never had anxiety in my entire life. The anger, the emotion of anger, depression, things like that all day I can talk about. Stress and anxiety, it's really hard for me to relate to that because I've never been there. But I'm just giving an example of and I'm happy to talk to you about creating what are crazy little ways, like me doing that to the car, that helped me deal with if somebody else would have scratched that car day one, oh dude, I would have been furious. I owned it. I took that scratch. I had to work on my non-attachment. And the fact that that little thing was on the car meant nothing. So it's just another example of those of us who think, not just you, Pat, but everybody that thinks that it's just about meditation. It's not. If we're angry people and you meditate, you're just going to be an angry meditator. So we have to figure out ways to cut through these emotions. No pun intended. Yeah. So we'll do one more question, then we'll wrap up. Or we'll just wrap up. Yeah. Oh man, I might not answer it. I'm just telling you right now.
It's more of a statement. It's about your birthday. Humpty Dumpty believed that unbirthdays are more important than birthdays.
Our
Unbirthdays.
unbirthdays,
From Alice in Wonderland.
yes,
So you have 364 unbirthdays.
yes. So let's celebrate those.
Yes.
Thanks, Chuck. Love you, dude. You enjoy palms? May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to my parents, who were crazy enough to bring me into this world. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering.